Welcome back to the channel, Guardians. Today I have a fun one for you. I recently acquired the Collective Obligation from the Vow of the Disciple raid. Fun fact, on my very first run. I was very excited to see it drop and to get into some of these builds that I know it's been so great for. I know it's got a couple of buffs since it came out, and I'll be going over all that stuff here in the video. But first, please do be sure to like and subscribe to my channel so that I know I'm bringing you things that you want to be seeing. As well, stick around at the end of the video for an original meme. Those are always fun. But anyway, let's get into it. I wanted to kind of get into a little bit of a build and kind of a guide on how to use the Collective Obligation here. So I have my Void Warlock here. I'm running Verity's Brow with it. This is a very great exotic to boost your grenade damage on every energy weapon kill, since we're going to be getting the Collective Obligation. And I have a nice little back and forth here between the Collective Obligation and our grenades. They're going to play off each other really well. I do want to go into the stats here for you really quick. We do have Arrowhead Break, we have Flared Magwell. The trait, the exotic trait, let's see, is Umbral Sustenance. This weapon's magazine is automatically reloaded when you gain Devour. That's going to be important for later when we go into the actual build. When you gain Devour, a Void Overshield, or become invisible. But for Warlocks, we're going to be getting Devour all day. Then we do have Handlaid Stock as well. And let's go down to the intrinsic trait, Void Leech. Now, this is where it gets a little bit complicated, but if you can master this little bit here, you'll be having a ton of fun. So this says, this weapon leeches void debuffs when damaging targets that are suppressed, weakened, or volatile. Once charged, press R, your reload button, to swap firing modes. This mode, damaging enemies, will apply the same void debuff that were leeched from dealing damage with the weapon. So basically, we're going to use our grenade attached to Verity's Brow. I'm going to go in here, but just keep that in mind real quick. That's how we're going to be leeching. That's how we're going to be leeching our damage into the weapon. So let's go in here. I'm using Cataclysm. You can really use whatever you want, but I'm using Cataclysm. It is the higher damage of the Nova Bombs. We do have a Healing Rift, Burst Glide, Pocket Singularity. It's the only one that you can have, but Pocket Singularity does have Volatile. When you hit something with Pocket Singularity, it will make the enemy volatile. So sometimes it's a little bit hard to get the volatile debuff from the grenade in this build. I'll show you why here in a second, but you can always use your melee to make up for that and to get that volatile debuff. I'm using Vortex Grenade because personally I like it the best. You can use whatever one that you want, but I like to use this right here, the Chaos Accelerant. Hold your grenade button to overcharge your grenade for the vortex that increases the size, linger, duration of the vortex. Axion Bolt creates an additional seeker. Scatter Grenade has sub-munitions tracked to nearby targets, and Magnetic Grenades release a short-range Void Blast. But for me, again, I'm going to use the Vortex Grenade. I like that one because you can really get enemies that, you know, may not have necessarily walked through your grenade prior. It kind of creates a good barrier, and sometimes even since it's so big, you can kind of stand in the middle and not take too much damage from things like you know, the war beasts and things like that. We're also going to be using Feed the Void. Defeating a target with a Void ability will activate your Devour ability. While getting Devour, your final blows will restore your health and extend the duration of Devour. And so that is one of the best kind of attributes to this build that really plays well off of the Collective Obligation. You're going to be going in with your Void ability, activating your Devour. Every time you reactivate Devour with the Collective Obligation, it's going to reload it. You don't have to activate the exotic perk or anything like that. It's good on its own. You'll get some kills. It'll give you a full magazine. It'll be just like, you know, things like Bad Juju. Every time you get a kill, it will reload your weapon a little bit. But this is a full reload, just like the catalyst on the Huckleberry. We'll go into our fragments here for a sec. I do have Echo of Instability. Defeating targets with grenades grants volatile rounds and to your void weapons. And this is how we're also getting volatile from our grenade. So we're getting a grenade onto a target. We're going to hit them with the collective obligation. It's going to leech the weaken effect from the grenade, which I'll get into with, let's see, this echo right here, the echo of undermining your void grenades will weaken targets. So that'll be how we get the weaken. Come back over here. Once the grenade kills that enemy, we'll get volatile rounds on the collective obligation. That doesn't put the leech onto collective obligation, so you do have to shoot something again and then shoot it one more time to get the leech off of the rounds, but it's kind of a way to feed yourself volatile, which is really nice. It gives you 10 strength, not going to argue with that. Then I do have my Echo of Remnants to really even boost even harder into this grenade build. We're going to keep our void grenades always out, always on the ground, dealing damage as much as possible. So I'll come back over here. So now that we know what's doing what, we know our grenade is giving weaken and volatile. Let's see how the collective obligation plays off that. So we do have our umbral sustenance. Like I was saying earlier, this weapon's magazine is automatically reloaded when you gain devour, and so that's all we're worried about for the warlocks here. I know titans are probably going to be more on the overshields, and hunters will be on the invisible train there, but we're sticking with devour because this is a void warlock build. Coming down into the void leech, this weapon leeches void debuffs when damaging targets that are suppressed, weakened, or volatile. So that's when we throw in our grenade onto a target, we are gaining those debuffs, and you'll kind of be able to see it on the weapon here. We can kind of see in our sight up here, actually. If you can follow me all the way up here, there's a large and three small circles up here. The large one will tell you when we're ready to activate the void leech trait, when we're ready to press R or whatever your reload bind is to reload and to activate that trait. And the other 3 dots on this site here are to tell you which ones you have. Do you have suppression, weakening, or volatile rounds on the weapon currently? And when you do the reload, which ones is the gun going to leech onto the enemies that it shoots? So that's the build for you here. I do have a couple of things that will definitely help us out, like grenade kickstarts. Every time I throw my grenade, I'm going to get some grenade energy back. I do have elemental armaments and font of might so that I can get a void well off of that pretty easily, give me more grenade ability and everything like that for my grenade, but it will also deal extra damage with the collective obligation as well. That's going to stack with the buffs that it has also received. When it first came out, you were going to have to wait a 10-second timer after activating the Void Leech ability. They removed that a couple of seasons later, along with giving a buff. I think at one point they gave him a 20% and then another 20%. So it's strong right now. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take us into the duality dungeon. So I know this might not be the greatest for specifically boss damage or anything like that, but I was thinking in that Galron encounter, that first encounter, the first real encounter inside of the duality dungeon, there's a lot of majors in there. There's a lot of orange bars. There's a lot of, the Galron echoes and everything. We're going to test it out. We're going to see what happens with this pulse rifle inside of that dungeon. So let's get to it. All right, so getting into the dungeon, you can kind of see, get that Void Leech going, and we can see the center one at the very bottom says that it's ready, so we activate it. We have 2 debuffs. That would be the Volatile and the Weaken. And so it makes pretty short work of any of these orange bar enemies here. You know, I did have to reload because I wasn't able to proc the Devour. So this room in here, you can pretty well churn through any trash mobs that you might find in your way, some scions and things like that. You can always go through, and I like to pre-fire with the grenade so that I can then get a little bit of that void debuff going into a room I'm about to enter. And so I have all the debuffs. I have one of them at this point, and so I'm thinking, maybe I need another one, right? So you can go in, and this is where you can use that melee to grab that volatile debuff in there, activating the perk, and then gaining Devour as I'm about to, die from the other enemies next to me. It really can come in and save your life, as well as help you to churn through many of those different enemies and large numbers of them as well, as you will see later. And this next room really shows off the power of the Devour plus all the different buffs we have working together. We have Devour, we have the volatile rounds, we activate the ability there, the Void Leech ability. We are churning through a lot of those enemies, and I mean, really just not having any problems getting through. I think I shoot something like 32 or 35 bursts without having to reload there. Practicing this build will really pay off for you in the long run, of course. I've only had access to the weapon for a few days now at this point, and so having a little bit of that practice in there to be able to come in, use that exotic perk to its fullest is still a little bit of a challenge, right? And so we'll kind of see that a little bit, I'm sure, when we're in our next room there in the boss area, one of the boss areas. So we want to grab our buffs, go through, and when we have a target in mind, pop that buff, get the Void Leech going and working through on that enemy. We'll also see in the next room how you can use it on kind of a group of enemies. We can kind of see that a little bit here, but we'll see it to a larger extent in the final room here. I did use this as an opportunity to learn the overall loop for the Duality Dungeon when it comes to coming in and trying to solo this kind of a dungeon. It is fairly difficult, of course. I mean, there's a lot of phases that you're going to have to get through to get Galron defeated here, this Nightmare of Galron. So I'm only going to go through the first encounter until I get a damage phase down, and to be honest, that was really all I could get to at this point, having just got in and started to learn this. So you can see we go in, we are getting our debuffs, we are going through the rest of the dungeon, making sure we are able to clear out our ads. I am using a blinding grenade launcher here that did help me out kind of a lot, and I do think that it pairs pretty well with this exotic in general, because it does help to kind of be able to have your enemies lined up and not really getting after you too much. And here's a great example where, using the grenade as kind of a wall to keep the enemies away from you back behind. They'll eventually try and come through, and then really they're not going to really be able to do much to you. So it's as much of an offensive thing as it is defensive. You can activate your perk just like there, grab one of the Void Wells on the ground, and then deal some big damage. I did do a little bit of a test here to see how much the Weaken would do to these Galron nightmares here, and the visages or visions of Galron, I'm sorry. And they weren't enough, unfortunately, to get the one shot until I grabbed a Void Well to get that damage boost again. What I definitely liked about this build was I could toss one of my overcharged grenades on both those Bellkeepers over there, and it would get the kill overall. And so that was a way where I was able to kind of grab and transfer a lot of my stack to get the Weaken and the Volatile. So overall, I mean, I definitely enjoy using this build. This might be one of my favorite ones so far, because you can really do a whole lot. You can get all kinds of buffs and debuffs, stacking, and kind of have an at-will debuff. And, you can toss your grenade, get a good melee to grab your Devour. In here, I did end up kind of getting bonked by the Centurion there, but it ended up working out because I then ended up having my volatile rounds from killing those Bellkeepers out there, and I was able to then finish off the Centurion with some of that volatile damage. And that kind of saved me a little bit in that room, and kind of being able to clear out a lot of these mobs with just a little bit of that volatile there. So I did in fact end up making it to a damage phase in this dungeon here, which I was not super confident that I would, but I ended up making it. So I'll go ahead and say, if I can get 100 likes on this video within the week that it's been posted, I will do anything in my power to solo flawless this dungeon. I've not solo flawlessed any dungeons, but I will go ahead, I will put my mind to it, and I'll get it done. Let's see how much pain the community can put me through. Anyway, Guardians, my name is Ember. Thank you again for stopping by. Let's go ahead and throw that meme up there on the page. My people have waited long enough. Thank you again, Guardians, and remember, be without form, swift as lightning. Till next time.